Okay. A quick overview of everything that I've done for this project so far. It's greatly unfinished currently, but I'm going to do a quick overview of what I've achieved. Fine. Um, so how I've done this project, now I've actually gone through it, is I've gone I've gone off track currently, and I'm gonna rethink all this process. But um, the process of actually making this, rather than the idea, was using Blender, and a way that I knew would work best for this type of animation, which is keyframing, is using a rig. And I already knew how to rig. I already knew how to model in Blender, and it wasn't a fairly too complex process for me. I'm just gonna go through it. So each bone is parented to is parented to this model I've made. Quick mod. I made this model just by using planes and messing around. Shape. Um, Exit. Messing with a shape, a silhouette of a being. So once I've done that, I joined it all together and I created bones, the model. These bones allow me to articulate this model. And usually with bones, when you have a bone, it can mess with the entire thing. And so having usually something like this, which I don't want it to bend, I want it to be rigid and not being manipulated by another, say like this upper arm bone. I don't want it to manipulate the lower arm at all. So I had to learn weight painting to make sure that with weights, it basically tells how much influence the bone has on this part. So this top bone has a lot of influence over all this top part up here, all this here. But also it has a little bit down here. There's less influence in this. So if I had to assume, this will be like this will be more red than this. This will be like blue down here, and that's how weights work with bones. You can see how it's red for the indicating how much influence it has. So this is the most, and this is the least. And for this rig, I had set it up in a way so this torso bone had all the influence over the torso. The head bone had all the influence over the head. Um, Forearm, hands, all that. It had each bone had all the influence part, so it's rigid and doesn't bend. That's what I was going for here. More like a rigid and stable look. But also, um, in the remake of I'm gonna do with this, is that I want to include stretching and squashing. That's another thing you can do with a bone. Into pose mode, you can stretch and squash the bone, bend and squash element. Um, about the other components, such as like the fingers, the eye, the legs, which aren't rigged, actual thing, I manually animated them as objects. So I did a bit of camera trickery almost, and you can see it now, where the outline of the iris here, see the fingers underneath, the legs underneath. Also, those all come up from behind. So as characters there, they come up behind, but you don't see it coming up behind because you have view like this. You don't see the bone. the iris is right there, but you don't see it. So I'm using a bit of camera trickery to sort of have this illusion of everything just appearing, even though it's come up from behind. I feel like that's what's made it really easy. You don't want a 2D plane, 2D something like this. It just makes it easier. And as you can see on the actual rig itself in Blender, it's only one half done. That's because I know reanimating all these legs and all these fingers and legs over to the other side is possible, but also it's time consuming. So I actually fixed that in After Effects afterwards, but a bit more onto Blender. So the way I actually did all this also was with a camera and rendered it out as an animation. But I've set it to 50 frames a second, so it's nice and fluid, nice and it all. There's also something that I've learnt semi with animation past is sort of flailing movement. So as it's coming up and as it's going down, it's sort of flailing, sort of loose. Move this down. Just a quick move down of the arm. The arm wouldn't just move straight, but more like it bend. Something like what I did for the arm actually coming down. Sort of put the hands in, put a bit of the arm. So it's like and onto the After Effects part. So once it's all rendered out, I actually duplicated the footage, and it created this mirror effect. Made it really, really easy to just have the other side. You actually, see it's mirrored. And how I actually accomplished this was in a mask. So I have a mask directly cutting down half of the footage. So I've duplicated the footage and transformed, flipped it horizontally, which allowed me to do this. But also, there's one issue with this, that if I ever wanted to move the eye sideways and have it look around, eye will also be duplicated on the other side. So I've been trying to figure ways on how to combat that to make sure that's all right. Everything. And the remake hopefully can do a lot better job of it all. And I believe I can. And I have gone a bit off track with storyboard. Well, not my storyboard, my actual original idea onto my storyboard. And I feel like if I was to take a look back, ensure that I'm still following my own steps on my own trail, good enough, I can probably produce a lot more better, which hopefully gonna get done. But this is the process of the current unfinished final project using Blender. A bit more of I've gone through a little bit with motion blur. I've just been messing for a little bit, see how that works out. And I assume because the model is on a pure white background with a pure black silhouette, it can't really show motion blur. So if you see on the hand to sort of squash, but then they like as it slows down, it gets bigger. I believe that's the actual motion blur kicking in, but it's not showing some after trails because of the contrast, which I think it looks good. But personally, I think I would have the colors be a bit different and actually see some motion and maybe having a more artistic style to it with rotoscope, like some. And the original idea was to have a brushed-like texture, and I didn't really achieve that with this one, so I'm not too happy about it. That's another thing I want to include in the next one, the remake. Also, I want to include some sort of. I feel like it's too balanced or too coordinated. So I feel like what makes someone so human is the uncoordinated, sort of untimed um, process of anything that we do. And I believe that this arm just coming up and this arm coming up at the same time as this one, the exact same frame, the fingers coming out of the exact same style, frame, and time. Lots enough putting sort of roboticness rather than a human identity I was trying to simulate. But that's also me just going off track again. I believe I could do a better job. But I'd sort of want to add some maybe inconsistencies with it, make it more human, but also along with different color schemes. So maybe I can go for a nice color back. I have used maybe sort of a nice pastel red, or maybe a some created out for. But yeah, that's the process that I went through with doing this. I believe it was a easy enough process because I already knew how to use it. I had some experience with Blender and I thought it was just going to be nice and easy tasks, nice and easy program to actually use. But I also believe that because I know how to use Blender, it sort of clouded my idea process. I sort of went into this um, automatic sort of just getting something rather than my actual idea. So I believe I can do a better job on that personally. So the everything just different type of color, and I feel like I could probably do it a different color so you can see some finer detail. But that's currently it so far. I used a light source, object to shadow. Yeah, that's going all the way to color, and kind of like that effect of a shadow. You don't see it on the black and white, sadly. In one of my older versions, look for now. One of my older versions, it did have a shadow on the back of it, and it kind of did look pretty weird. But I also thought like gave it more personality, gave it more sort of an actual. Some say like the shadow is like the soul or something. I feel like I'm really rambling on. That's just about my process.